Hello everyone, I am Amarachi Ubani. Nigerian officials have confirmed they lost 20 soldiers when militants attacked a camp for Malian refugees. Authorities suspect the death toll could rise, but reported that 3 soldiers were injured in the attack. They believe the militants' target was a military post near the camp. It's not the first time this has happened. Last month, 2 refugees were killed when unidentified gunmen attacked the security post near Niger's Tabare camp, which also houses Malian refugees. It is election day in the Kingdom of Morocco as they put together a new parliament, the second time they will be doing so since voting on a new constitution in 2011, when King Mohammed VI was vested with executive power. That election was to help the country become a constitutional monarchy to prevent a recurrence of the Arab Spring. The king is still as powerful, though by agreeing to the constitution he has relinquished some of his powers. In this election, the Islamist Justice and Development Party is hoping to make a big win at the polls. Its main opposition is the Authenticity and Modernity Party, which wants to bring back what it has described as the Islamization of the Moroccan society. Speaking of governments, the U.S. is full of high praise for the government of Cape Verde, which it says portrayed a model of democratic values and processes in Africa during its presidential election last Sunday. President Jorge Carlos Fonseca won a second term with 75% of the polls, which were generally considered peaceful. On the Mo Ibrahim Index on Good Governance, Cape Verde is considered 3rd overall best in Africa after Mauritius and Botswana. President Robert Mugabe has left Zimbabwe. Not for good. He's off to an official visit to Malaysia. Not much has been said about this visit, but there is speculation the president is in Malaysia with his wife, First Lady Grace Mugabe, for their routine medical checkups in the Far East. The trip, however, has an official appeal as Transport Minister Jerome Gombo and Financial Minister Patrick Chinamasa are among other senior government officials accompanying the president on the trip. While President Mugabe is gone, Transparency International has released its report on the country, revealing at least $1 billion is lost annually to corruption. Fingers are pointed to President Mugabe, and there's already a campaign online citing corruption in the president's government, which has led to protests prevailing in the country for weeks.
The report released on Tuesday indicates that the resulting institutionalization and systemization of corruption in Zimbabwean political and economic spheres has been extensive. Corruption mainly consists of public officials demanding bribes for basic services in the country, like installing an electricity meter or approving a house plan or facilitating investment.
The idea behind it is to quantify and to qualitatively analyze the causes of corruption in our society as Zimbabwe, and hopefully also offer recommendations of how to tackle corruption as it affects different members of the society and different sectors of society. So this particular one was looking at the political economy of corruption and its impact on society.
The report says the police, local council, the vehicle inspection department that issues driving licenses, and the education department were among the most corrupt institutions. Zimbabwe was last year ranked 150th out of 168 countries on the Transparency International Index, which measures public perception of corruption in public institutions.
What this study shows, and what other studies show, is that Zimbabwe is facing a real problem with corruption. They talk about it being systemic and endemic. And I said in my opening remarks that the report also go as far as say that it's been the way of doing business, that business people will count the cost of corruption into their calculations, which is a real problem, obviously.
Corruption is not necessarily perpetuated by government or civil servants, but it is across the board. Private sector is involved in corruption. Opposition are also involved in corruption. In fact, there was a surge in corruption during the unity government. And so it is wrong to try and apportion that to a specific political party.
Zimbabwe's tax authority in May suspended its head and 5 managers in connection with the purchase of luxury cars that were undervalued by a local dealer, one of few high-ranking graft cases to be made public in recent years.
Probe into the political crisis in Burundi has caused the country to have a rethink about its membership of the International Criminal Court. This comes 6 months after the court's prosecutor said she would investigate ongoing violence in the country. The political unrest began after President Pierre Nkurunziza said he would run a 3rd term in office last year. More than 400 people have been killed in the arrests. More than 200,000 more have fled their homes since April. Before the withdrawal can be effected, however, the Burundian parliament has to pass a bill legalizing it. Vice President Gaston Sindimore said the government is not worried the decision will lead to international isolation, but that Burundi is ready to face the consequences. Burundi becomes the 2nd African country to reconsider its membership of the ICC, Kenya being the first following a proposal made earlier this year. Let's get some perspective on this now. Joining me is Professor Wahab Egbewole from the Department of Jurisprudence and International Law at the University of Ilorin. Professor, we appreciate you joining us today on the program.
Thank you, Amarachi.
What do you make of this decision that Burundi is considering pulling out of the ICC?
What, from the pristine position of international law, a country has a right to belong or choose not to want to belong to any organization because it is the essence of the principle of state sovereignty. But if we look at the reason which the Burundian president, President Nkurunziza, was canvassing for the basis of wanting to exit from ICC, you will agree with me that it is just an acknowledgement of the fact that something is fundamentally wrong with us as Africans and with the Burundian authorities. Because the joining ICC by the African states, and by the way, there are 122 countries that are members of ICC now. Africans are just 34 of 122. If Burundi, because I followed the discussion, is the 2nd country that is seeking to exit. And if you look at the position of the African Union way back in 2013, calling attention to the fact that they will pull out en bloc from the ICC, we agree with me that it is far more than Burundi, and it is more of a collective continental challenge. For me, if we look at the trajectory of the Burundian state from April 2015 to date, hundreds of people have been killed. More than 270,000 Burundians are serving refugee in various parts of the world. People have been named, and the place is yet unsettled, all because of the ambition of a single individual. So that individual, because he's in authority now, wants to pull Burundi out of ICC, which to me is serving as a check on the excesses of the Burundian government. That's my perspective, and I think it is important for us. Yes, I agree. It is the right of Burundi to exit ICC, but the basis, the rationale, the reason for wanting to do something that should concern us as Africans, should concern the ordinary Burundians.
Professor, the Burundian government says it's ready to face the consequences, and it doesn't think that this withdrawal will lead to international isolation. What do you think the consequences will be if Burundi eventually carries out this decision?
Thank you. Ironically, there are two perspectives to effects of international law. Today, some scholars still believe that, international law is mere moral adjuration. Some, like me, believe that, yes, it is mere adjuration. However, there are sanctions that will be put in place. And we don't have to look too far beyond. Nigeria was an example of an international isolationist sanction in the days of President Abacha, and we knew what we felt. We were a failure state. So the consequences are far more fundamental than we may be thinking of, because there can be social sanctions, there could be economic sanctions, there could be political sanctions. And I want to, if they have opportunity to listen to this, the people in authority in Burundi, they should be concerned about the effect of such isolationist sanctions against the government of the government and good people of Burundi, as against the individuals. If they should subdue their ambition, subdue their interest into that collective interest of the people of Burundi, instead of just wanting to pull out because it has far-reaching consequences.
Professor Wahab Egbewole of the Department of Jurisprudence and International Law at the University of Ilorin, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us on Network Africa. Back home, an FCT High Court has struck out 2-count charge of criminal conspiracy and forgery filed against the Senate President, Dr. Bukola Saraki, his deputy, Ike Ekweremadu, former clerk of the National Assembly, Abubakar Mai Kasuwa, and the current deputy clerk of the federal government of Nigeria. Trial judge Justice Yusufu Halilu struck out the charges following an application by the prosecuting counsel, Mr. Aliyu Umar, withdrawing the case. Mr. Umar told the court that the charges against all 4 accused persons are withdrawn because the subject matter is before a court of coordinate jurisdiction. And with no objection from the defense counsel, Justice Yusuf struck out the charge and discharged all the accused persons.
Like I said in court, we have reviewed the applications. And it's true that there is a case, even though it was by a senator, challenging the Attorney General and the Inspector General of Police to investigate and prosecute this case. And for that reason, we felt that we shouldn't be playing one court against the other. There is a possibility that there may be conflicting judgments. And this government, like the Attorney General instructed me, adheres to the rule of law and fairness, fair hearing. That's why we are withdrawing this case, pending the time when that case will be completed.
The case naturally had to come to an end because of the existence of an abuse of process. And there's no need to go into it. We're quite delighted that counsel brought his experience to bear in the matter, and the case has been brought to a close. I hope that this sad chapter never repeats itself.